presentation is about urban wildlife corridors, and it's going to be specifically focusing on examining greenbelt connections within Tarrant County, Texas. So, introduction to the issue. So what are urban wildlife corridors? So they are going to be natural pathways that connect fragmented habitats to one another, and they allow animals to move safely between those fragmented habitats. And I do want to clarify that when it says natural pathways, it doesn't mean that they occur naturally. It means that they are made from natural materials. So although like it maybe have like a foundation of like cement or concrete, it's going to include things like dirt, grass, trees, and things like that to make it seem like it's part of the natural landscape that those animals would be using. So why does this matter specifically within Tarrant County? So Tarrant County itself, for one, has a very wide range of animals that live there. Some of the more typical ones that you would expect to see within like suburban, urban areas, like mice, raccoons, possums, the occasional armadillo even. But they also have some other ones that you might not expect to see in more urban areas, like bobcats. They even get bats sometimes. And one thing that really surprised me was there's also been reports of alligators living within Tarrant County. So there's a very wide range of animals that live there. And so rapid growth within Tarrant County has fragmented their habitats though. Things like highways and cities have blocked animals' natural movement within their environment. And so wildlife corridors would help to preserve the biodiversity within the county by allowing animals to move safely between the different parts of the habitat. So region of focus is also going to be Tarrant County, which I do have a picture of right there. So it's located in northern Texas, and it is part of the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Obviously, it is more on the Fort Worth side, with Fort Worth being pretty much smack dab in the middle of Tarrant County. It also includes other cities like Arlington and all the surrounding suburbs. Also, it's important to note that Tarrant County is, I believe, either the second or third most populous county in Texas. So there's a lot of people there, which just increases that urban sprawl that has already been happening. So why this region matters environmentally, like I just mentioned, it is one of the fastest growing urban areas not only in Texas, actually, in the US. Development has also reduced the natural prairie, forest, and river habitats that were there originally. And also, the Trinity River actually runs through parts of Tarrant County, and the area surrounding the river and the river itself has also greatly been impacted by this urban sprawl. So, habitat fragmentation and urban growth. So, things like roads, buildings, homes, and like giant skyscrapers and just large concrete areas all work together to divide up ecosystems. Wildlife populations then become isolated, and this can increase things like roadkill, because at this point the animals cannot get to what was their natural habitat. So when they have to cross the roads, obviously they can get hit by cars more often this way. And it also greatly reduces genetic diversity within populations. Some key facts to note is that urban sprawl is a major driver of habitat loss, not just in Tarrant County, but worldwide. Species like deer, foxes, birds, coyotes, which I did forget to mention earlier, and all the other ones that I mentioned earlier as well, are all greatly affected. And these green corridors would help to reconnect ecosystems that are fragmented. And then right here, I do have a picture of a fragmented ecosystem. So it's easier to see once you have the actual slides in front of you. But so basically, it shows the edge habitat and the species that live there, and then also the inner part of the habitat and the species that live there. And then whenever a road gets built, it shows that the edge areas will increase, the interior part will decrease, but then it also shows how certain species that live within the interior, as that habitat gets shrunk down, they get separated from different ones. So when species depend on other species to survive, whenever they get fragmented like this, it can be really detrimental to their population. So, impact on the local environment. Environmental effects. A reduce in biodiversity within those urban areas. disturbed migration and feeding patterns. Like I just said, those roads, buildings, and everything, it's completely disrupting how those animals are used to living. So many different parts of their way of life are getting disrupted whenever we create urban areas that used to belong to those animals. Like I mentioned earlier, there's also an increase in human-wildlife conflict as we take over their area. They have nowhere else to go, so we're going to be seeing them more. And some of the more dangerous animals like coyotes and bobcats, it's going to create more conflict with humans. There's also a decline in native plant regeneration due to animal movement. Animals are one of the key factors in pollinating and helping different types of plants reproduce. So whenever we take those animals away or those numbers get reduced, it then in turn also affects the plants as well. So a specific example within Tarrant County is whenever these highways were built, separating these green spaces, they were major highways like I-30 and I-35, and if you've ever driven on those, you know you just don't cross those. Like as a human, you would never cross those. So imagine an animal now trying to have to cross that over just to get to a food source or get to a water source. It is extremely dangerous for them. Alright, so impact on the community or people. So people are affected by, as I mentioned, increased vehicle collisions with wildlife, which not only can create biohazards on the road where animals are there becoming roadkill basically, but it can also be extremely dangerous to the person. Hitting a deer with your car can actually cause not only your car a lot of damage, but can also cause you some major injuries. So it's just not good all around for everybody involved, honestly. Loss of natural recreation spaces. So like I mentioned, the Trinity River, not that I would ever swim in the Trinity River, but things like kayaking and things, as we destroy the area around that and the river becomes more polluted and there's less wildlife there, it's less enjoyable as a recreation space for those types of things. Reduced ecosystem services like clean air, water filtration, cooling effects. The urban heat effect is a very real thing. So if you've ever noticed that big cities are hotter than like surrounding suburbs, it's because of the concrete and everything else there. It makes it hotter there. So as we continue to build out our urban areas, it's only going to become hotter for everybody. Also, many species help with, especially with plants, they can help filtrate water within like the rivers, and also plants are also responsible for photosynthesis and putting clean oxygen in there. So as we take away those things, it affects us too. And there's also less access to nature in urban neighborhoods. As we do increase our urban sprawl, things like going to a park, playing in the shade of a tree become less and less possible. So connection to the class. Within class, we have talked about things like habitat fragmentation, biodiversity, and species interdependence, like I mentioned earlier. Human impacts on ecosystems and conservation biology strategies. So solutions and what is currently being done. So current strategies suggested are creating wildlife overpasses and underpasses for things like those major highways like I-35 and I-30 to create a safe way for animals to cross over and get to the different resources that they need. Protected greenbelt preservation areas, urban planning that actually preserves the wildlife instead of just tearing it down and getting rid of it. And also adding in local parks and nature preserves that can help connect these fragmented habitats, sorry. A specific example is the Trinity River Greenbelt conservation efforts. So as I mentioned earlier, the Trinity River does run through Tarrant County, and so there has already been some efforts within the Trinity River to help restore and preserve some of the wildlife there. And it includes restoring the 10,000 acre floodway, creating a 130-mile paddling trail, and also establishing regional national parks to improve water quality and habitat for the wildlife. So proposed ideas. My proposal would be to expand the continuous greenbelt system across Tarrant County, require wildlife crossing structures in new highway projects. Obviously, it is sometimes hard to add them in after the fact, especially with how often the highways do seem to be under construction. So in any further highway constructions, I think it'd be extremely beneficial to include those either overpasses or underpasses strictly for animal use. I also think it would be good to restore native prairie strips between suburbs. I have seen many times where between neighborhoods it's just gravel or just it's not usable really for any wildlife. So trying to restore that area so some of those species can come back and live there, both plants and animals, would be very beneficial. And also community-led things like tree planting on the corridors to connect parks could also get the community involved in the project. So why these work, some of them are low cost compared to long-term investments, like having to redo all the highways to include them. I understand that would probably cost more money than just including them in future ones. And then also support both urban development and wildlife survival. And then, so here's just an example. This is not Tarrant County specific. This is just one that I found. And so it's just kind of showing how these corridors could work, where it's connecting parks to nature areas, to nature preserves, the greenbelt area. So just, this kind of just an example of a city with these connections and how they would work connecting all these different areas together. So in conclusion, urban growth in Tarrant County has been and is going to continue fragmenting the natural wildlife that has been there. Wildlife corridors that would reconnect these ecosystems and reduce harm should begin to be implemented into future urban projects. Solutions exist but still require a lot of planning and investments. And then the Greenbelt expansion benefits both wildlife and people. So Tarrant County really should be looking into doing things like this, and not honestly just in Tarrant County, but honestly in any urban space. I think all of these things would be very beneficial to both the humans and the animals living there. And then here's my references as well.